These are 3 more of Gravity Falls' scariest episodes, the third one being Headhunters. The episode starts off with Dipper and Mabel watching their favorite show, Duck Detective, but then Seuss interrupts them to tell them about something crazy he just found. While he was cleaning the shack like he normally does, he noticed a secret door that led to a hidden room filled with wax figures. After scaring them so bad, Grunkle Stan tells him about how he used to have a Gravity Falls wax museum, but then he forgot all about them. And he's got a bunch of them. He got Sherlock Holmes, some Goblin Man. He also had a wax Abraham Lincoln, but he left it right next to a suspicious looking window. And due to the heat from the sunlight, wax Abraham Lincoln is now nothing more than a puddle. And once Mabel sees this pool of wax on the floor, she gets the genius idea to recycle the wax into a new figure because she's an arts and craft master. And Mabel's first idea for a wax sculpture is definitely something, but Dipper convinces her to do something from real life, like someone in her family. And then the perfect inspiration walks out.
Have you seen my pants?
So now Mabel is in grind mode and makes a perfect life-size wax figure of Stan. And because Stan's a narcissist, he decides to host a grand reopening of the wax museum, but he does something insane, and I'll talk about it in a minute. So Stan unveils the wax figure of himself, but no one really cares. Mabel asks if anyone has a question, and McGucket says something terrifying. Are the wax figures alive? That would be insane if they were. The thought of wax figures being alive and moving when you don't see them is extremely creepy, and it reminds me of the movie House of Wax. That movie terrified me. But now we see why everyone in the town really came to this. Stan put that there would be free pizza if you bought a ticket to the event, but this dude did not get any pizza. And instead of just ordering the pizza, he just runs away with the money. But now Stan is hanging out with the wax version of himself, and then he goes to the bathroom. But in the few minutes Stan was on the toilet, Wax Stan was murdered, straight up decapitated, and there's no sign of his head. And they literally call the police over, but they just write off the case as unsolvable. Dipper offers to help, but the cops just make fun of him. So Dipper now locks in and is gonna try hard on this case. So he sets up a whole suspect board, and this episode takes a murder mystery turn. The only clues that they find are an axe and footprints with the hole in one of the shoes. At first they suspect it's the lumberjack, but it turns out the murder weapon is a left-handed axe, and he's right-handed. So now they decide to go through the entire town and see who's left-handed. And the last person they had to check off is Toby. They pull up with the cops, sure that it was Toby, because of the hole in his shoe and the fact that he's a lefty. But he was doing some other stuff at 10 p.m. last night, so it definitely wasn't Toby. And to make things even worse, there's no fingerprints on the axe at all, so they can't do anything with it. And now Stan's having a funeral for his wax replica, but him and Seuss run out of the room crying. Dipper thinks back on everything about the case, and he notices Stan's shoe has a hole in it. But wait, what has holes in their shoes and no fingerprints? The murderers are the wax figures, and the wax figures literally come to life and even pull out the decapitated head of Wax Stan. They now explain that they're cursed to come to life whenever the moon is waxing, and that they came from a haunted garage sale. You see, for a while, the Gravity Falls Wax Museum was a hit, but it stopped making money, and he locked them up in a room and forgot all about them. They've been stuck in this room for 10 whole years, waiting to get their revenge on Stan. And the wax figures were literally trying to kill Stan, but since he was in the bathroom, they accidentally got the wax figure instead. That's insane. Stan literally almost died. The wax figures are now planning to kill Dipper and Mabel, since they know their secret. And this scene of their eyes rolling back to their head is just terrifying. Dipper and Mabel are backed into a corner when they realize they could just use hot melty things to melt the wax figures. So they grab 2 fake candles and try to fend off the wax figures. And what's even weirder is not only are the wax figures cursed to be alive, but they feel actual pain. I can't even imagine what it feels like to just melt. That's probably one of the worst ways to go. Wax Sherlock Holmes pulls out a sword on Dipper, and they have an epic sword battle. The sword battle goes all the way up to the roof. Sherlock kicks Dipper right in the chest and is literally about to kill him, but he starts melting when the sun comes up, which is so lucky. Literally, Dipper and Stan almost died in this episode. And also, this scene of Sherlock melting is actually terrifying. I'm honestly sorry if this is in your nightmares tonight. And the fact that he says,
The cops are right. You're adorable.
That means these wax figures have literally heard everything going on in the house for the last 10 years, just waiting in this dark, secluded room to murder Stan. And what's even crazier is these kids literally spent the entire night killing his wax figures, and Stan sees all the damage and asks them what happened, but he's more happy about the fact that they found his wax head. Then the episode ends on a creepy note, because the wax head of Larry King is still alive, living in the vents, just listening and watching. This episode was insanely creepy to me. One thing that doesn't make sense to me though, is if they came to life at night, how come it never just broke through the window? The one that caused Abe Lincoln to melt. Not only that, but if this dude didn't go to the bathroom at 10 p.m., he literally would have been dead. That's some insane luck. The fact that these wax figures weren't even evil at all and actually were pretty happy with their life until Stan locked them away kind of makes me feel bad for them. And I can understand why they want the revenge. And honestly, that's some great writing. To make me feel bad for people trying to kill my favorite characters is amazing. And also the fact that they made something so generic, like wax figures being alive, and made into this entertaining episode with amazing lore was just great. I love it. And also, just watching the wax figures melt in agony was horrifying and made me really uncomfortable. The second scariest episode is Summerween. The episode starts off with Stan explaining the Gravity Falls tradition of Summerween. You see, the people of Gravity Falls love Halloween so much, they celebrate it twice a year, which is honestly kind of sick. I wish this would actually happen, because I'd have so much fun. Imagine Universal twice a year, but turns out Summerween is literally that day though. So everybody does some last minute shopping, but Stan actually just steals a bunch of stuff while Dipper and Mabel prepare their costumes. Then Seuss tells them about an urban legend about something called the Summerween trickster, who takes kids with no Summerween spirit, but the kids just forget about it. Wendy and Robbie come by because Wendy forgot her jacket, and they invite Dipper to a party. So now he doesn't know if he should go trick-or-treating or go to the party, which is honestly sad. Dipper missed out on so many things trying to impress Wendy, and then in the end, she didn't even like him. Boy was delusional, but I get it. Me too. Mabel and her friends are ready to go trick-or-treating, but now Dipper is suddenly sick, but he's obviously faking it because he wants to go to the party and see Wendy. Anyways, then a huge creepy dude knocks on the door, but Dipper says he's too old to be trick-or-treating and slams the door on his face. The scary figure knocks again, but Dipper tells him to go away, and he's definitely gonna regret that. So Mabel answers the door, and the gigantic creature tells them they must pay for insulting him. And this thing also does something insane. An innocent little trick-or-treater is walking by, and it straight up eats him. The creature then introduces himself as a Summerween trickster and tells the kids they have to collect 500 pieces of candy before the last chocolate melon goes out, otherwise he's going to eat them. So pretty much after this, the plot seems to center around Dipper being torn between having fun trick-or-treating or acting cool and trying to fit in with the older kids, and also a Summerween trickster is watching them trick-or-treat. And this thing is just terrifying and unsettling. The way he's so large yet jumps around so gracefully is pretty creepy. Mabel tried getting Dipper to put on his costume, but he still pretends to be sick, which causes them to get loser candy. So Dipper finally agrees to put on his costume, and they go through a huge montage and get a fat wheelbarrow full of candy until something terrible happens. Wendy just so happens to be driving by, and Dipper was so desperate to look cool that he threw his costume off and dumped all the candy behind a bush, and all the candy fell off the cliff into water just as the last chocolate melon is about to go out. And the trickster has been waiting, and he is not happy, and he starts to reveal his true form, and it's absolutely disgusting. He gets a lot bigger and even grows another set of arms. The monster chases the kids and manages to catch all of them when Seuss rams right into them with the truck, and he doesn't even know what he just hit.
That wasn't like a regular pedestrian, was it?
As they're driving away, all of the pieces of the monster form back together, and he jumps on top of the truck. The monster even makes Seuss crash his truck right into the Summerween Superstore, and everybody almost manages to escape too using disguises, but Seuss just can't help himself, and he pushes on the skeleton head so it'll tell a joke, and the monster eats Seuss, which makes everyone charge at it with a bunch of plastic Halloween weapons. Also, I never noticed this, but there's a symbol of Bill on Dipper's shield, which is interesting. The monster catches Dipper and Mabel and finally reveals just what he is. All of the old disgusting loser candy that no one eats. So all of the old disgusting loser candy that no one eats somehow accumulated into a monster seeking revenge. Since no one wanted to eat him, now he's gonna eat them. And look at his real face. Awful, terrifying, but not as terrifying as the next scene. Seuss eats through the monster's stomach and emerges like a whole rat, and this makes the monster happy. All he ever wanted was for someone to eat him and enjoy him, so now he can die happy, I guess. But this whole scene is kind of uncomfortable. Also, a little kid from earlier is good, but he's definitely traumatized. Then the episode ends with everyone enjoying some candy and watching scary movies, and Dipper is learning to enjoy his childhood instead of trying to act cool for Wendy. But then Seuss says something chilling.
I ate a man alive tonight.
This episode's whole atmosphere was just eerie and so creepy, but I really enjoyed the writing of it. The way the Submarine Trickster pranced around and stalked the kids was extremely disturbing, and the reveal of his true face was terrifying. In the end, really started to feel hopeless, and I had no idea how Dipper and Mabel were going to defeat the Trickster, which is awesome. I love endings that feel like they're impossible. And also, the scene of Seuss eating the Trickster is horrifying in its own way. The fact that he's still conscious and crying while Seuss just continues to eat him alive is so insane to me. I also love Halloween specials for shows, and I feel like Gravity Falls nailed the vibes of Halloween and managed to keep the episode scary, even though the show takes place in the summertime, which I thought was pretty cool. So finally, the scariest Gravity Falls episode is Dreamscapers. The episode starts off with everyone laughing at a goofy commercial of Little Gideon and bonding over how much they hate him. In the commercial, Gideon says he's opening his tent of telepathy right on top of the Mystery Shack. Gideon really wants to see the rights to the Mystery Shack from Stan, and all of his attempts of breaking in never work. Kinda reminds me of Plankton, but Gideon is now extremely desperate and has nowhere else to look. So he decides to use the powers of the journal to do something terrifying. Back at the shack, somehow a bag got into the kitchen, so Stan tells Dipper to deal with it. And Dipper is annoyed because Stan is always picking on him to do hard choices instead of Seuss or Mabel. Just outside the shack though, Gideon is setting up a whole demonic ritual, and his evil little boy laughter is so loud that Seuss and Mabel literally hear him. So they go to see what he's doing, and it's not good. This kid is so desperate to get the code to Stan's safe, he straight up summons a demon to invade Stan's mind. The demon's name is Bill Cipher, and he's a chaos demon that comes from another dimension, and he does something insanely horrifying. He rips out all of his deer teeth right out of his mouth and hands them to Gideon. So they make a deal, but it's not very clear what kind of deal it is, besides the fact that Bill's end is to give Gideon the deed to the Mystery Shack, or rather the memory of Stan entering the code to the safe. All Bill says in return is that Gideon has to help him with something he's been working on. For all he knows, Gideon could have signed away his body to a demon and has no idea. Seuss and Mabel run to the shack to tell Dipper what they just saw, and Dipper goes to check his journal. I also want to talk about how cool it is that we get to see the differences in the journals. Since in Gideon's journal, Bill's name wasn't even written, but in Dipper's journal, it was very clear how threatening the author found Bill to be, stating him as the most powerful creature he's ever come across. There's also a note in red that says, "Do not summon at all cost." But it's already too late because the demon goes right into Stan's mind. But it turns out you can actually follow the demon inside someone's brain by chanting some gibberish and touching their head, so that's pretty convenient. Just the fact that they're going inside Grunkle Stan's brain makes this episode pretty scary in itself. I don't even want to know what's in there. The inside of Stan's mind looks weird to say the least. Everything is extremely distorted and in black and white. So I wonder if something's wrong with his mind or if this is how it's supposed to look. They instantly see Bill though, and he blasts a hole right through Dipper, but it doesn't hurt him for some reason. He just has a hole in him now. Bill tells him his plans to find the memory of Stan entering the code to his safe, and he tells him that he can read their minds, which is insanely creepy. He also brings Mabel's thinking to life, which are two guys from the cover of a movie she likes a lot. So Bill rushes into the shack where Stan's memories are, and the gang follow him. Next they go through a montage of a bunch of Stan's memories, and Dipper wanders off when he sees a door labeled Dipper's Memories. He finds a memory of Seuss asking Stan why he's always so hard on Dipper, and Stan starts whispering, and Dipper hears Stan say that he's a weak loser and he wants to get rid of him, and he shuts the door, and obviously he's really sad about that. That's tough. Next we see a memory labeled Top Secret, and it's this horrifying scene of Stan feeding his stomach and talking to it. Gross. So Seuss gives Mabel the idea to check under the rug, and that's right where they find the memory of Stan entering the safe code. But somehow, in this 10-second clip, Bill switched out with Seuss and took his appearance, and that allows him to steal the memory of the safe code. And Dipper, still butthurt, tells Mabel he's not going to help Stan get the deed back. So Mabel and Seuss chase after Bill on their own, and Bill's about to tell Gideon the code when Mabel shoots the memory right out of his hands, straight into a memory of the bottomless pit. But Gideon cuts off his deal with Bill and says he's going with plan B. As soon as he does this too, it seems like Bill loses his power and his physical form, which makes him extremely angry, and he starts to torture Seuss and Mabel, bringing their worst fears to life. Seuss's worst fear is some British dog man, and Mabel's is looking like this, I guess. Meanwhile, Dipper is trying to find the exit, but he runs into the same memory he did before. Only this time, he hears what Stan actually says. He says that because he was such a wimp when he was a kid, he wants to toughen Dipper up, so he's able to fight back, and he's even proud of him. And Dipper accidentally falls into the door, and the memory Stan fixes his hole up, and tells Dipper that because he's inside of his mind, he can do literally anything he can imagine. So Dipper hears Seuss and Mabel screaming, and he runs to help them. Bill kills Mabel's dream boys, and is about to blast them, when Dipper pops up to save them. He tells Seuss and Mabel that they can do anything, and they all work together to fight the mind demon. Eventually, Bill just gets tired of it, and tells them he's gonna let them off the hook, and leaves them with an extremely creepy "I'll be watching" as he fades away. Not long after this, Stan wakes up, and it seems everything is good, and the problem is solved. Or is it? Right after everyone wakes up, there's a rumble, and then a giant explosion. Now we find out what Gideon's plan B was: dynamite. Gideon blew right through Stan's safe, and now has the rights to the mystery shack, and is now gonna destroy it. And the episode ends on that brutal cliffhanger. Everything about this episode had such an unsettling vibe to it, and it was extremely creepy. The fact that there's a demon that can travel through dimensions and show you your nightmares is extremely terrifying. Gravity Falls is always hinted at as supernatural, but this is the first time we see anything of this scale. Not only does everyone go into Stan's brain, but they have to fight an ancient demon while doing so. I think the kids got extremely lucky that Gideon cut off his deal with Bill, otherwise who knows what would have happened. I think what makes Bill so scary too is that instead of just killing his victims, he likes to sit there and watch them suffer in whatever ways he can imagine. The scene of Bill giving Gideon the deer teeth was just disturbing. The awful cliffhanger of Gideon taking the deed to the house too really solidifies the horrifying atmosphere. Nothing is scarier than losing your house. This episode was also just amazing too. The story was great, we got to meet Bill, who was terrifying, we got some character development between Stan and Dipper, and we got to see his stomach scene, which just because of that, this is the scariest episode, 100%. But I don't know, I'm just watching TV, talking about Gravity Falls, talking about Gravity Falls, the scariest episode of Gravity Falls, part 2 actually, there's actually part 1. Watch part 1 is right here on the screen. Part 1's right here.